years I've been driving this train, years in this lane, there's no stopping this flame.
Hello everybody, this is my first ever YouTube series where I'll be instructing you on how to build a full stack web application with AWS Amplify and React. So who's this for? I assume some level of experience with hopefully some of these technologies that we're going to use in this course. We'll go over exactly what those technologies are here in a bit, but yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time over syntax with React or anything too basic like that. So that's not to say that beginner developers can't get any value out of this course. I think there will still be plenty of value, but it's definitely targeted towards people with some level of experience. So yeah, we're building it with AWS Amplify. Why are we doing this? Well, it's an AWS service, so that's pretty great because it gives you access to a lot of other services inside the AWS ecosystem. Not a lot of services, all the services. So yeah, AWS is the #1 cloud provider for a reason, and access to their services can definitely prove valuable down the road. Another reason is it's going to handle a lot of the authentication for us. Authentication, if you ever tried to implement a sign-in or sign-out form, it turns out to be a much more challenging problem than you expect. And there's all kinds of vulnerabilities you can introduce into your app if you do it incorrectly. So just having it managed by someone who actually knows what they're doing is pretty fantastic. And it makes for a good developer experience as well. And yeah, it's production ready, it's scalable, it's just a really great service, and there are alternatives that will go in more detail in a bit, like Google's Firebase, but I think Amplify really proves to be a much more production ready service. And yeah, if Amplify stops meeting your needs, you can detach it at any point and just host it on normal AWS services. And if you need to migrate it outside the AWS cloud, that's probably going to be a lot more challenging, but certainly just detaching it from Amplify is not too big of an issue. So yeah, there are some alternatives. Firebase is certainly one. It's not a true alternative because Amplify actually helps out quite a bit with both backend development and front-end development. Firebase is kind of just a backend solution for front-end developers, so you'll still have to figure out some sort of hosting solution. Amplify kind of takes care of all that. Heroku, we don't talk about that anymore. They kind of nuked their free tier, so yeah, don't need to spend a whole lot of time on that. Docker is a fantastic technology. Maybe I'll make a video series about it later on. It's also not a true alternative because it's not necessarily a hosting solution, but it helps out quite a bit with some of the hosting solution, or making hosting easier, deploying apps easier, all that. So yeah, none of these are really true alternatives. Firebase would definitely be the closest, and while it's a lot easier, I think Amplify proves to be a lot more verbose and gives you a lot more freedom as a developer. It's certainly easier though. If you're a beginner developer, Firebase is probably worth taking a look at. We'll just go through a little ChatGPT example that I did like literally 10 seconds ago. So this is about updating this NoSQL data inside a database. This is the Firebase solution, and you can see how easy the API is. Like just by reading the code, you have a pretty good idea of what's going on. So yeah, you have this object that gives you access to your database. There's I'm sure you have a bunch of different collections in your database that you can use. In this case, it's users. And then yeah, you can access a specific user and the API for updating information on that user. Super easy. And in fact, it makes nested queries pretty easy. You can see in this syntax, it's just you have this dot here and it'll access a nested piece of data inside your database. So we'll go down to what we're going to use in this course, which is the DynamoDB solution. And this is using Dynamo, or AWS's DynamoDB software development kit. I guess it's the AWS software development kit, but you can access DynamoDB from that. So yeah, you can see it's just a lot more verbose. It doesn't read as neatly. It's got this set command down here that maybe is more similar to a traditional SQL query, but not really at all. And yeah, when you have values you want to put inside the query, you gotta, well, I guess down here, And same with like expression names that you need to access too. So it can be a little more complicated. It's not to say it can't do anything that Firebase store can't do, but certainly Firebase is an easier solution. But yeah, Amplify definitely offers a lot more flexibility. And all that's not to say that you can't use Amplify and then use Firebase as simply a data store and get access to this simple API. I mean, that really is the beauty of Amplify, is it gives you access to build your app however you want to build it, and that's pretty great. So yeah, this is the app we're going to build. It is called Red Team versus Blue Team, or RVB for short, and it is literally just a simple application that records button clicks, and I can show it to you right now. So we got it hosted. Let's bring this over here. Yes, this is the app. You can see that when you click it, it kind of increments this value up here, and eventually that gets pushed to the backend and then to the database. You can do the same thing with the blue team, and same functionality in the header actually. So that kind of makes this whole page useless, but I like the look of these buttons, so they're going to stay. And you need a landing page for a web application anyways. So yeah, I could click on this and I could show you some of the authentication stuff. I'm not going to do that though, because you guys don't need to see my personal email account. What else we got? So settings, we'll go over some of this when we go over theming and material UI stuff. But yeah, light theme, dark theme, very smooth, very good. And yeah, it also records stats, so you can see the distribution of clicks up here in the header actually. The pie chart's a little more obvious exactly who's winning though, so good to include as well. And then this is interesting. It's number of clicks over time. You can see I haven't really been using this much over the last week. But yeah, so pretty simple application. It isn't too hard to build, certainly from like just a front end perspective. I'd say it's about as simple as it gets. The whole point of this project was to build the simplest application possible and bring it to production, because there's always issues that you run into that you don't expect when you bring an app to production. So that kind of brings in its own set of unique challenges and skills that are good to develop as a developer. So things we're going to cover. Here's the front end stuff we're going to cover. TypeScript. If you're not using TypeScript, you really should be. React, just the best JavaScript library, so of course we're going to use it. Specifically, we're going to use hooks in React. It's just a great way to manage state and make your applications easier to read and maintain. Vite, there are a lot of build tools that we could use. This is the one that I have chosen. When I go through this video, I might show you how to do it with just Create React App, because it's also super simple and doesn't really lead to any differences down the road. Why do I like Vite? The development builds with Vite are super quick, and if you have a large application, wouldn't be a problem with this application. But if you do have a larger application, that can be a bottleneck, and Vite just makes your life a lot easier. So we're going to use at least 5 libraries. I think this is all I incorporated, but we're going to use Material UI for our components, themings, and icons. AWS Amplify, they have an SDK you can use on the front end. I guess you kind of saw that earlier in the ChatGPT example. Yeah, they have an SDK on the front end that you can use to integrate the back end and handle authentication stuff. So to navigate the web page, we use React Router. It's just the most popular one and super easy to work with. Recharts, in a similar vein, the most popular charting library in React, and I've really liked it. For a lot of this code, I might go through this in some of the videos. I just use ChatGPT to write it for me. If you're not using ChatGPT to make your life better as a developer, you really should be. And yeah, use hooks TS. This is the last one. TS is just TypeScript. Use hooks. I already told you how much I love hooks, and there's a reason for that. And this library just has a bunch of really good hooks that will make our life easier. So one of them actually is the local storage hook. It's called use local storage, and it's really great. It just makes working with local storage breeze. And of course, this is a web application, so we're going to have to make some API calls. So the backend stuff. AWS Amplify, obviously our solution. AWS Lambda, this is what we're going to use to connect our front end to our database layer. And in specific instances, we're going to use these cron jobs that operate as Lambda functions. And if you don't know what a cron job is, it's just a scheduled event that you can schedule. In our case, it's usually every hour. One of our Lambda functions is going to be an Express.js Lambda function. DynamoDB for the database layer. Handling users with AWS Amplify, we'll see all that. And in certain cases, you might have to give permissions to some of these Lambda functions. There might actually be a way using the Amplify CLI to avoid that, but it's still a useful exercise to get used to some of the AWS resources. So I'll probably try to show both of those options. And so much more. I don't exactly remember everything that went into building this app, but we will certainly figure it out along the way. So alternatives, I think we already went over that. Yeah. So what could we have done differently? Yes. What could we have done differently? After building this application and exploring a lot of options on Amplify, like I said earlier, you can build your app pretty much exactly as you want to. I decided that it probably would have been more useful to use both these technologies. So Next.js is basically another layer over a React app where it allows things like server-side rendering, and it actually would solve an issue for this one as well. I didn't originally want to use GraphQL because it seemed like you'd have to query the GraphQL layer straight from the front end, and that's not great because sometimes you really do. In fact, I'd say most of the time, you really do want a traditional or a true backend. That gives you more flexibility. For instance, if you're, it makes sense to have one API call, but you need to mutate two things in the database. It's not really possible with this GraphQL layer. Mostly, that's not entirely true. It's really just the way Amplify does GraphQL because it doesn't let you build your own resolvers. So you can't do things like that. They kind of auto-generate the resolvers for you, and it does make accessing the data a lot easier. But yeah, it's just not the same level of flexibility. But since Next.js is a backend solution, it kind of fixes that for us, where we can have this backend that makes a couple different GraphQL queries. And yeah, so anyways, that's I might rebuild this app sometime using these technologies and release that as an entirely separate course. Yeah, I think that would be interesting and certainly a useful exercise. Anyways, that's the intro video. I'm going to start recording the next video, and I'm looking forward to a good course. Hopefully you guys enjoy it and get a little bit out of it.
And I changed it to play how I like, rearranged it to my own domain. Yeah, I got what it takes, made lots of mistakes, taking shots, skipping breaks, feeling lost, feeling great, popping off, singing straight, never stopped, never changed. All the squad here to play, and I've got something to say, yeah. I work hard each and every day, I get lost in the words I say. I don't push pause, no, I push play. I won't stop till I make a change. I withdraw on the things I make. I turn flaws into flawless traits. I build tall, never capped in space. I won't stop till I hear him say, oh, oh, la, 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 la. And I'm up again. I got tired eyes, need a cup of blend. That's right, in the AM, that's my only friend. No light, just the sun coming up on the horizon. I lose track of time, yeah, I move fast and climb a new class divine, yeah, true passion shines. And I'm through passing time, I choose stacking dimes. You snooze half the time while I move passing by. I work hard each and every day, I get lost in the words I say. I don't push pause, no, I push play. I won't stop till I make a change. I withdraw on the things I make. I turn flaws into flawless traits. I build tall, never capped in space. I won't stop till I hear him say, oh, oh, la, 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 la.